All right, we're about 2 minutes after the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started and we'll catch up anybody that comes in. I want to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Thanks so much for joining and giving us a bit of your time to talk about AQAV and the mission and AV9000 and some really cool geeky tech stuff. My name is Bill Lawrence. I'm the Vice President of Programs, volunteer for AQAV and one of the board members and a longtime fan of the organization as well. So it's exciting for me to have the opportunity to talk to everybody about something that's very passionate to all of us at AQAV, and that's quality and quality management systems. We're going to hit a wide variety of topics today, but mostly we're going to try to familiarize you with AQAV, the Association for Quality and Audiovisual Technology, and AV9000, which is the de facto standard for quality. So punch lists was the topic on the top of the slide deck, something I think we're all familiar with, that terrible question that we get asked as AV personnel or AV users, is the project done? Done is a defined word that doesn't mean a lot in our industry. I think done means much more to people who have been around more than a minute. AV is a difficult business, but to many people in the construction and renovation world professionally, it's just an add-on. It's something that gets done as an afterthought or at the end of the project. It's not something that's given an awful lot of consideration by different trades and end users sometimes. Now, many end users are very savvy and they put that additional focus on it. And in those instances, we're much better led. But it is the last thing in typically in a construction or renovation project. And as such, it has its own unique set of difficulties, not only around delivery, but even early on in the process and development and design. Often we're set with these challenges we see enumerated on the screen. A very low budget for a need or a desired operations methodology that's much, much more expensive than what we budgeted for. Having the budget to do the work, but not having the ancillary infrastructure, the internet, the physical requirements for installation, the acoustical and lighting treatments to make it a successful project and well-rounded. Having somebody that maybe is tech savvy and it's their first AV project and they feel that perhaps they have more knowledge and experience than they do. And we have to guide them through understanding that there are a lot of potential pitfalls that often aren't discovered until you've fallen into them. Having that mom and pop small company that delivers their first AV project, and again, they feel they've got it under control, but perhaps they've wandered into a realm of UC or perhaps IT-based systems that is outside of their reach and their expertise. This happens. Often we discover that we've overreached only once we've started to lose balance and fall. Perhaps it's that call from the project manager that they see the image and they hear some sound and so we're done with our job, please pay us now, which is not a really good way to close out a project and ensure that the complete functionality is there. We've got a better system for this. It is a world of miscommunication, missed opportunities, and non-deliveries. This is a challenging business, as we said at the start, and it only gets worse when we don't accommodate that in our planning. Along comes AQAV. So what is AQAV? Well, at our core, we're a 501c3. That's a charitable, not-for-profit organization, and we are focused on quality and audiovisual. And we'll talk through how that is manifested in the mission statement. But this is really the core belief of the folks who formed the organization that became AQAV. The three founding principles really are honor, education, and discipline. And it's raising everyone's level to that which becomes predictable and acceptable for the end user. Because at the end of the day, that's who's paying the bills and that's who has requested services of our industry. And that's who we must fulfill our promise to. How do we go about that? Well, we define the standards for quality management systems for AV technology providers, and that's AV9000. We'll talk a little more about that. We provide training on AV quality issues and how to discover and correct them. That's the various certifications that we'll go through one by one: CQD, CQT, L, and QTM. We'll provide appraisal audits of AV companies that are looking to become AV9000 compliant in the spirit of the ISO construct, that ISO 9000 framework. And we'll spend a minute talking about that as well. So in the audio visual industry, education and training, where do we sit? Well, there are the absolute longstanding icons of industry associations that most of us are familiar with. There's AVIXA, formerly Infocom. If you go way back, it was several names before that, but we won't show our age today. Undoubtedly, the pinnacle of broad and deep training for audiovisual design and installation and project management skills. There's NSCA, which teaches a similar skill set, but in a different and more diverse manner. They complement each other very well. And then there's us, AQAV, and we are a quality organization. As a part of that, we do teach and we do educate, but we don't do the same thing in any stretch or of the imagination that the two formerly mentioned organizations do. What we teach is not the skill sets of how to, but the skill sets of how to ensure that the how to was done. So AVIXA, NSCA, and those other similar how-to organizations will give you the founding knowledge, the practice, and the ability to deliver, design, and do the stuff. AQAV took on the role of making sure that it was all done. Now, that's not to say that people don't do it because they're sneaky or they're lazy, but it means that a lot of things go on. And in the field, changes happen and pressures occur, and we forget or we often may misinterpret things. And AQAV set out to put together a very logical and very reasonable methodology to ensure that all those skills and calculations and physical delivery training items that the former institutions gave us knowledge on are being actually executed in the field. I always like to say I love a good sandwich with a little bit of mayonnaise, but if I don't get the mayonnaise out of the fridge, I really haven't made the sandwich I want. Well, AQAV is making sure that you get just the right amount of mayo on that sandwich, and it turns out to meet the expectation. You can use that one if you want, because I just made it up and I probably won't use it again. But I always try to find a way to make it real. And I haven't had my lunch either, so that made me influence my example there. So the message of this whole rambling slide really is that we don't compete with AVIXA and NSCA. We're not looking to replace them or say they're doing anything bad. And in actuality, AQAV points to the certifications that AVIXA and NSCA and several others can help you achieve, because we are expecting the people entering our courses to have understanding of those knowledges and to be able to do the design and do the actions in the field so that we can verify, test, and record the outcome. So we really do complement each other as professional education and professional quality driven organizations. And in order to complement each other, we really do feel that it's best results of staying separate. The old analogy of you don't hire the fox to guard the hen house. Well, if you're inside your own organization, it's much more difficult to see blind spots or to see delivery issues if you're working from your own methodology. And that's true in the field as well. If we make a mistake or we miss or omit something, it's much less likely that we will see that when we go back over it a second time than it is that an independent auditor who didn't perform the design or the actions will catch it based on a written methodical checklist. And that's what makes us such an incredibly powerful organization and tool. So we have to define quality, because that means a lot of different things. If we go back to Duran, who was a hallmark of quality concepts, it's fitness for use. So does the thing do what it needs to do and do it as expected? Crosby, again, another icon of quality and concepts. Quality means conformance, not elegance. So there is an assumption often that something that is of quality is shiny or heavy or it's better than the rest. And Crosby said that same thing too as well. It's not true that that's the case. So if I have to get from the house to the grocery store and I only need to bring one bag with me, well, my 1976 Charger will do it just as effectively as a Lamborghini, and maybe even more so because I got a little better trunk space and much less insurance payments. So both are vehicles, both will transport us, both will get that single bag of groceries back, but one's not more quality than the other if they achieve the goal we just stated. So when we look also at the concept of quality, we can say that quality or economy of effort, meaning doing things as fast, effectively, and predictably as possible, therefore, by making the work more profitable, are actually kind of different variations or pronunciations of the same words. And that's from our esteemed founder and Mario Maltese. I couldn't agree more. People think quality is doing extra. As quality manager for my organization, I hear we don't have time to do all that. And my immediate response back is, well, no, you don't, because you're doing it wrong. You're double checking, you're redoing work, you're going back. Quality management really tells you the fastest way to get something done that will definitely come out the way you expect with the minimal amount of effort. I tell people that this is actually a time saver because you're not wandering around. If I give you a description of a house several states away, you may eventually find it. If I give you the address, probably your chances are much better. If I plug it into your GPS and show you the best route, then you're going to get there faster and more predictably than any of the other methods. It really is refining the practice to its most efficient and predictable form. But at the end of the day, quality means most to the end user that we are conforming to the requirements or the promise that we made in the design and functional description. There's a couple different ways that quality can be approached in the industry, and they're both good. Don't get me wrong. A little bit of medicine is sometimes as effective as a lot of medicine, but the right amount of medicine is what works best. So in lowercase q or little quality control, we do all the things that we would normally do in our delivery. We evaluate the system, we design the process and define the stuff, we stage the equipment, we commission it. And then when we get out and install it, we check to make sure that everything works. Don't get me wrong, good idea. And I've been in this business about 35 years, a long time like a lot of you folks have. And I've seen where that inspection doesn't even occur. We go in, we light it up, we hear sound and see video, and we say, peace out, it works, this is awesome. And only later, when the service contract comes to life, do we find that we actually had installation and programming and alignment and setup inadequacies. And those are discovered after the fact, and we have to drive back and fix them, and shame on us. But if we do this check and we find those things, we may have to go all the way back to the pre-eval and find out that we had a design issue. We may have to redesign it on the fly some equipment in overnight, get a change order, and maybe some of that's at our own expense. But at least we're doing it and we're finding it. So yes, this is a great place to start. We want to find the defects and correct them before that last, here we're handing over the keys to the castle and it's yours to inhabit. So it's a good thing. But the better thing by far is improved quality assurance with that capital Q. And in this instance, we separate out all of the quality checks for every logical stage of the delivery. So we look at the contract review early and make sure that it's complete and understood. We look at the design review and make sure that it's complete and effective, and that feedback from the field delivery people is that they can indeed do it and it will work. We look at the engineering, the staging, the commissioning review, and if you notice, there is a pass-fail decision for each stage of the project. And at each of those pass-fail stages, there's a corollary checklist within AV 9000 that is a comprehensive set of questions and measurements to be obtained that ensure that we have passed fully this stage. If there are non-conformances, they will be found out in these checklists. And that checklist is updated annually, every year, by a committee of widely diverse people, from end users to manufacturers to integrators to programmers. And we keep that very fresh and relevant as new technologies, new methodologies, and new challenges in delivery arise. So what happens here that we benefit from is if we have a design fail and we know that we have a subsized screen or a sound system that can't deliver sufficient output that's required by the consultant or the end user. We can correct that on paper. We can rebudget it as necessary, amend the quote in the scope of work, and there's very little lost in that process. I don't know if anybody's had the experience of doing large venue sound. I've done a few arenas and stadiums, and there's nothing more nervous than turning it up for the first time when a crowd goes live. If you do the math and you need to raise the sound level in that stadium by, say, 6 dB, doesn't sound a lot. That is an astronomical amount of work and money to increase the power and the output drivers to achieve that. So doing that check in the design review process can literally save you $500,000. I think it's worth it. And you've got the evidence and the proof to go back in the after action report and determine what went well and didn't if there are some unsuspected changes that pop up. So AV9000 addresses all this. It provides a framework of quality management system for AV companies and UC companies like us. It's compatible with the parent organization, the grand leader of quality management, ISO 9000. It's the internationally recognized and auditable standard for a quality management system. It very much closes the gaps and provides efficiencies that incredibly increase profits when they're adopted well. Section 2 of the 9000 standard provides the checklists that go into the pockets of the ISO 9000 master program for every major milestone of development in the project. And that's all of those things we just looked at: project contract initiation, design, engineering review, site readiness, staging, commissioning, and completion or commissioning turn-off. And that is a holistic pillar to post quality management system. So who else uses this type of system? Well, it's not just AQAV. You know, we can't take credit for inventing it. ISO 9000's been around a while. The automotive industry uses it to ensure quality in manufacturing and design. Their version of AV 9000 is QC 9000. They've got a quality organization, the Automotive Industry Action Group, and an industry association, the Alliance of Automotive Manufacturers. Well, hey, those are just like AQAV and do education and oversight and auditing to ensure compliance. Aerospace has AS 9100 and a quality and industry org as well. And telco, which many of us have at least a peripheral connection to. I did about 11-year stint at British Telecom as a carrier class telephony delivery. TL9000 is the same thing. And we built the construct of AQAV and AV9000 on these iconic quality control methodologies. Anyone that's ever flown on a plane has undoubtedly noticed from the window seat that the pilot goes around and checks everything on the plane. You may have also noticed they check it in the same order every time, and they've got a checklist that they put pen and paper to. And that practice is this. That really is a quality management system for getting that heaping hunk of aluminum and carbon-based life forms into the air and keeping them safely there until they bring them back down in the destination that they hopefully booked for. And that's super important. Every time I see that pilot putting a check in there, my heart goes a little bit faster and I get a swell of pride. This really is the most proof positive that things do work based on the safety record of the airline industry losing less human lives than we do in the automotive and driving every day. This just works. So what do we do for training? We talked about the complementary thing. We talked about the base skills. Well, we broke this down as we started to build out the education around AV9000, and we thought, let's start in the field because that really is the lowercase q. That's the quality check at the very end of the project, and let's make sure that's being done as right as possible. So the certified quality technician is the person in the field doing the measurements, the checks, and the checklists for the physical installation and configuration and all of the other things that went into the design. They need to be able to monitor and measure quality as it's developed and implemented, as it's pre-staged, as it's applied to the field. And we do teach this as an auditing position. Now that's important to know because auditors are independent people. They don't have all the historical knowledge to make assumptions. Oh, I think I saw Frank do that, so I'll just check it off. Or maybe I'm fairly sure that Susan put that in the code, so I don't need to test that page. Auditors are agnostic, and I like to say even ignorant because they don't know the history. They just have a thing to do. They've got a checklist to check, and that's what they check. They don't know if the installer was an A player or kind of a C-level newbie that makes more mistakes. They just look at the facts and they report them back in a non-critical, in a very plain language methodology so that actions can be taken. And that provides the evidentiary validation that things were indeed done. We're talking numbers. I needed 90 dB and I could only achieve 84 dB with the system before I reached the distortion limit. Those things can be corrected. A lot of times it's an adjustment in the field. But maybe with that lowercase q, it was actually a design issue where the amplifier was underpowered. Well, the CQT will catch that, and it's a good thing. But once we got the CQT up and rolling, we saw that, oh, wow, these jobs are getting done on the day they turned over. We decided it'd probably be a good idea to go back upstream and make sure that those things in the design issue bucket got fixed before the CQT in the field ever had to call up and deliver the bad news. So the CQD, the Certified Quality Designer certification, was established. And this is the knowledge and skills monitoring, measuring the quality at the design phase. This is checking things like, do I have sufficient power calculated for amplifier headroom? Have I not exceeded any critical cable lengths? Is the display the right size? Do these things sound familiar to you? I bet they do, because who teaches you how to figure those things out? Well, AVIXA and NSCA and those other organizations that we talked about earlier. We're making sure in the certified quality design audit that the math was done and it was done correctly. We're looking at paper at this point. We're not physically measuring devices. We're rechecking. We're ensuring that the information is there and it's congruent with what the expectation is. We're cross-checking with the functional narrative to make sure that the system has been described in a way that can be proved. So now we've got the design review happening. We know that we've got a nice clean and competent build moving forward to the field. And we know that down at that end of the process, we've got the certified quality technician, which, hey, they're looking at install things, which how do you get trained on to be a really great installer? Well, AVIXA CTSI does that for you. And guess what? Our checklist asks a lot of things that is trained in the CTSI program. So now we've got the design covered, we've got the field covered. How can we make things even better? Well, what we decided to develop there was a overview understanding of AQAV and AV9000 for the leadership in the integration and in the end user companies and everybody in between. And as such, we developed a program that is very much like what you're seeing today that explains not only what AQAV and AV9000 is and does, but the very, very critical importance of why that actually matters to the leaders of the company that may be much more business minded and good at those things and than they are at understanding what happens when you get a 35-foot HDMI cable on a 30-foot limited signal run. So this helps the leaders understand and justify that. It helps them understand how this program and application of the training and checklist actually will save the organization money and gain them customer retention. It helps the end users who is buying these things from integration companies understand how to communicate and set expectations very clearly with the designers, the consultants, and the integrators so that everybody knows what the end user wants, everybody knows what the end user expects, and it can all be settled as an agreement that it has been done and measured as complete at the end. Really, if we look at AV9000, it is ultimately designed in mind of the end user of the system, because that's who receives it long term. That's who set the expectations for delivery. That's who has to use it and wants to pay for it because it's what they expected to get. And if we serve that end user well, and if we communicate well, and if we prove to them, then we have done our job effectively, and we can assure the promise has been delivered. It also gives us a way to help the companies that are investing in the AV9000 um, to learn from the continual improvement that ISO 9000 style quality management nets them. Anything that goes awry, and things sometimes do still go awry, the worst thing to not know is what we don't know, can be rehashed and reviewed in a continual improvement. Some people might call it a post-mortem. I don't like to look at dead things, so I call it continual improvement or after action reviews. And we can learn from it. Hey, we found out that we were soldering irons were a bit too hot on those XLRs, so we had a few connections pop loose. Let's correct that in the shop and in the field. So what's new in 2020? The quality maintenance technician, the QMT, which is really cool. And it's an overview, kind of a CQT light, if you will, that helps the field-based operations technicians and engineers to understand if the system's functioning as expected. And we understand that the people that are on site or that go to site or that work in support of AV systems, whether that be a contracted position, an in-house position, or whether it's the end user themselves that do it because they don't have another resource set aside, need a way to make sure the system is doing what it said and it has not decayed or broken or over time stopped doing things that may not be readily apparent. So the QMT zooms out the CQT checklist a little bit and really allows the user experience, meaning eyes, ears, and tactile feel, to understand if it's performing or not. It doesn't require tens of thousands of dollars in test gear and extensive training on how to do fast 48 transform interpretation and impulse response in the field. It's a much more intuitive and tactile checklist. And that allows them to know when to notify the CQT or the integrator or whomever it is that has the higher skill set, the higher depth of bench and test equipment and knowledge to apply to the system to get it back in conformance, that important conformance word, with the original specification that it was installed and commissioned to. This has been wildly popular because there's a lot of folks out there that simply don't know if things are as optimized as they should or could be, and that can lead to confusion wherein equipment that maybe needs just minor adjustment or service is actually being replaced at a much higher cost. This is really taking off and becoming a much requested course. I'm excited about it, and we use this internally within my organization as well. We can do custom stuff like CQT Plus, and we did this for a branch of the Army. Oh, I like this phrase. AQAV instructors are the elite of the audiovisual industry. I'm going to double my volunteer salary of $0 and give myself a raise. It's very kind of that, but we do have some esteemed members on staff. Matter of fact, I think we've got a couple on the call today that are Educators of the Year from AVIXA, Fred Dixon Award winners, just people that have been around, done that, and seen that. They're generally quiet and humble, so you won't hear them tooting their own horns, but these are folks who have gone out and gained the scars of experience and learning, and they're willing to volunteer their time to share them with you. That's right, we're not for profit. We've got one executive administrator who takes a small salary, and that's Irene, who set up the call today and does the work of about 10 humans. The rest of us do this because we really do love to share. Training can be tailored to your specific objectives if these courses don't perfectly meet them, and we are very agile and very eager to learn those things. And that's how the QMT came to exist. What's new in training? Well, I just popped this slide together this morning, as a matter of fact. Remote. So if you hadn't heard, there's some stuff going on. It's not that I don't like to come see you and hang out, but it's not as easy as it used to be, at least for now. So we have focused a great deal of time and effort on creating remote, no contact training. and it's well into its development phase. We've actually implemented some beta testing on the classes. If you don't know a lot about CQT, it's a very hands-on course. We let you get out all the gear and play with it. We make sure you know how to measure it and get the exact results. And the testing for certification is a hands-on test. It's a practicum. Same with CQD. So we had to get very, very innovative about how we did that without physically going out and doing classes. And we've come to the point where we've got that under last phase development. We've got a couple classes that are scheduled early in January, and we'll be scaling that. So doesn't mean that in the future you won't be able to attend an on-site instructor-led course, but at least until there's a general consensus that it's back to a more normal mode of being and safety level, we are focusing heavily on doing this. So stay tuned. 2021's almost upon us, and it's going to bring great things for AQAV and the accessibility of AQAV. So how can you really get a little deeper? Well, we've got companies that are AVI or AV 9000 compliant. That means that they meet the strictures and that they do the things and that we audit. We've got AV 9000 certified companies, and that's a little more difficult. You actually do have to have an ISO 9000 certification to start with, and then bolt on the AV 9000 certification below that. We have auditors for the auditors. One of the things I do with some of my other volunteer time is audit work product from companies that are compliant or certified. We look to make sure that things are being done, and that's the same thing that happens with ISO. With my own company, I recently had to go fly out to do an ISO audit on a specific product that we do in the medical field. And as silly as it sounds, and as much as everybody was scared, I had a lot of fun doing it because I studied for the test for many years, and I knew the language and knew the answers, and it was really great to see ISO and AV 9000 married together in the field for efficacy. So you can adopt the AV 9000 as your quality assurance language in your RFPs if you're a consultant or an end user or a designer, or you can familiarize yourself with them as you see them come up in these RFPs. And it's a wonderful thing to see this because it really does level the playing field for people in terms of the expectation for commissioning and review. So it sets all of the quality management steps for everything from the pre-bid meeting all the way through to the end of the commissioning, measurement, and verification. It is based upon clear, concise, and complete narratives that have objective, measurable criteria in them. How many people have seen or had to fulfill an RFP that said the sound system will be luxurious with a radiant and very blue tone about it? Absolute poppycock. No way that anyone can say anything other than that, than they think it's their opinion. We're going to help you state that you will achieve 92 dB SPL with a weighted rating and a minimum coverage area and a distortion level of no greater than. These are measurable, proofable things. These are things that we can show and agree upon, and then show and again agree upon the performance was achieved in the field. That takes away the surprises, means that there's no, well, I didn't think it was loud enough. That's another one of those subjective terms that's impossible to prove. Loud enough to my wife is barely able to be heard if it comes to my guitar playing. Loud enough for me is when the neighbors not one but two blocks over call me and tell me that they love that riff. It defines and helps us understand what the objective is, so the cost of retesting gets offset by the retainer. And really, there's generally not a lot of retesting if you follow the checklist while you're doing the work, because it's a test where everybody knows the answers. So if your installing crew has to be commissioned and held accountable for quality by a consultant, you're all working from the same song sheet. As long as you get the measurements, you know the consultant's going to get the same measurements and the end user is going to like the measurements, and it's all going to be happy. You need to get in contact with us. Jot down that admin@aqav.org, and special organizations are eligible for coupon codes. There's Irene's happy to ask about membership questions and costs and what you get for that investment. The commercial membership buyer our membership benefit, which is free to AV buyers or end users. You get a copy of the current standard, the digital copy, a copy of the workbook, which has all the checklists in it. And members receive free white papers, which are written by ourselves and some folks that volunteer in the organization to provide collateral and education material. And those include some aid calculators to help speed through and verify that the expected data is what we want to achieve, some philosophical and hard design commentary, sometimes sharing just things that went wrong and why and how we can correct them. We're all responsible for quality at the end of the project. And I know that we've got a mix of end users and manufacturers and designers and installers on the call today. That's usually what AQAV gets. And we love that because we all have to sign on to agree to agree. So customers have to agree and document what they really need. That's that clear, concise, complete narrative. The worst thing I see in this business is when somebody talks to a customer and the customer says, well, I just want you to install these 5 or 6 things on a bill of materials. Those things can do a lot of things, but we don't know what those things need to do, and we can't succeed if we don't know what they need to do. Customer's going to let us know if there's defective issues, and they're going to help us as a supplier respond promptly and tactfully. They're going to feedback data quality to the supplier. And as a good process owner overseeing all this, we need to know the tools of quality and teach others so that they can work with us on a level playing field. We need to do that continual improvement thing. We're going to reduce defects, reduce delivery and cycle time, and we're going to know when we're on track. We're going to document and display the process defect levels in continual improvement projects. So if something fails during one of the quality checklists, I love that because we know we're doing it right. I had somebody that wanted to do so well, and they adopted the checklist and they sent it back and it had no non-conformances on it. And I thought, well, this seems pretty unlikely because everybody misses or makes or fudges. So when I called them up, I said, hey, you got like this $1 million project and you had nothing wrong with it, really? And they said to me, well, oh, no, there was a bunch of stuff that we caught, but we fixed it all and we marked it as conforming. And that was a little teachable moment for both of us. I was right. I didn't know how there couldn't be defects, and there were. What I hadn't thought about is perhaps I wasn't clear enough in how to use the checklist. So we had the conversation of catch these things, write them down, then we're going to go back and mark that they were fixed. No shame on you. As a matter of fact, hooray for sharing this so that other people can learn that this doesn't go as expected, but it's corrected, and here's how you can prevent it. So this is not a judgmental or a declarative negative process. It's a learning collaboration. And as suppliers, we need to understand the customer's requirements and agree and document the deliverables. No smoke, no mirrors, no magic curtain that we can hide behind and pull levels. We're going to commit to reduce defects and variations in what we promise to deliver. And we're going to measure quality from the end user perspective, that clear, concise, complete narrative. Did we meet the promise and deliver? We got a lot of success stories out there. We hear back all the time from end users, whether it be higher ed or industrial or finance or every other aspect of customer base that we do work for. And we hear right away that trunk slammers or those kind of fly by night, today we do AV people are eradicated. They just can't, they can't swim fast enough to keep up with the current, or they don't even want to. They want to be in and out and quick and dirty, and then that's their world and they're living in it. The beautiful thing we hear and love to smile about is turnover of the system is almost instantaneous. There's no done, it's done when it's done. Punch lists are oftentimes just aesthetic and they're observational. They really don't have a lot to do with the provider, so they're easily achieved or they're learning. There's a lot of improvement in efficiency because we don't have to get the call from the field that this doesn't work, get in the truck or get on the plane, reschedule, bump clients, go back out and fix it. So we can have more throughput. And there's a lot of positive effects on reputation and quite frankly, career advancement within your own company or your own organization as an end user. Hey, they always have successful projects. What can we give them to show them that we trust them and we want them to do more? From the providers, we hear that there is as much as a 95% decrease in warranty hours. Now, I feel the need to clarify that because in actual warranty repairs, in my experience, are probably about 90% finishing the installation right. So this is a very believable number. If we finish it right, we take away a lot of those things get lumped into the service contract. 30% efficiency. That means I can do 30% more work with the same amount of people because they're doing the fastest, surest, and most predictable way that we can. Customer sat scores go through the roof. Costs drop because we're spending less hours on it. We're not doing rework, and rework's on our own time. We're not giving away 100,000 watts of amplifiers because we didn't calculate that stadium sound system level. So prices drop and we can be more competitive in the marketplace and help our end users consume more. As an end user, if the price drops overall, that means that perhaps you can put 11 rooms on your budget instead of just the 9 that you previously had, because that is an accumulative win for the entire infrastructure of the AV lifecycle. Providers that do well in AV9 compliant and AV9000 compliance just rise above, and they make it very easy to suss out the people who aren't in on the not so secret quality management concept. So that's what we've got. I spent about 43 minutes out of the hour. I had committed to have it done in 45 so that we could open the floor for questions, and Irene's going to moderate that. Please, Irene, you want to have them raise their hand in the chat window or some other methodology so we don't have just a cattle call, and we'll take questions as best we can. Now, one thing I like to say, my best answer to any question is, I don't know, but I will find out. That's a quality mindset. So if you ask us something today that I don't know, I will find out and report back.
Okay. First question.
I see Ira Byra has a hand up.
That is correct. Thank you. Yes, CQL certification. I think I've asked this previously. Will you guys be having something that allows me to get my CQL?
Yes, I believe that course attendance allows to do that, Irene, and I will come back with a verification on that. That is going to probably be the next course up on remote support, Ira, so that we can do that. And I'm going to put this down as a takeaway question to make sure that I've got that criteria right. But I know that we do issue course attendance and compliance. That's not a demonstrable skills test that I'm aware of.
Okay, yeah, just get back to me. I'd like to
quality. Yeah, it's a quality competent leader.
Yep. Excellent question, Ira. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ira, I will send you something.
Okay, thank you, Irene.
Next.
Don't be shy. There's no bad questions. I'll even do math for you if you give me a minute.
I do have a question here in how do I get my AV9000 certification? There is on the website is all the information required to apply for the AV9000 compliance. In order to be AV9000 certified, you also need to have your ISO 9000 certification.
Yeah, so what we do with compliance, which is that first step, you'll be examined as a company just like you would under ISO 9000 to understand what portion of your staff are certified, that your quality management systems are actually in place, and then that's an ongoing active audit. So we will ask for evidence at time of renewal to see that you're doing the things within the quality management system. We'll pop in, ask to see reports, make sure that there's compliance on the way that they're being developed. And as an individual, that happens also with certifications as well. So at the end of your 3-year individual certification, you'll have to attend a short upschool training, skills renewal, and then we'll do an assessment to ensure that you're doing the checklist and that the way you're doing them are correct, and that you've not just kind of let it slide and use those 3 letters on your business card. And we see people that almost always are very engaged in this. For a compliance at a company level, that just scales out, and we do much the same things. Now, the harder part of that is if you want to go to complete AQAV AV9000 certification, as Irene mentioned, you do have to be an ISO 9000 certified company. There's not a ton of AV companies out there that can boast that because it's expensive and it's difficult. I was fortunate to work for British Telecom, and our division was ISO 9000 certified, and we were audited, and it was not an unpleasant experience at all. We passed with flying colors because we could produce the evidence from the AV 9000 system. So ISO 9000 is separate of AV 9000. Again, that's the master quality assurance program, the internationally recognized program. And we are the industry specific processes and quality management system tests that go along with that. So that's a little longer lead, but if your company's already ISO, you're half the distance down the field.
Next question we have is, how long does it take? How long does taking the certification course take?
So the certification courses are typically, we'll say 3 days. They run about 2.5 days and a quarter. I think that time has shrunk a little bit now that we've gone to the self-serve and online. So maybe as short as 2 days, and we're refining that to gain time. A lot of that extra time for the in-field courses was doing setup, breaking down for lunches, kind of covering the physical aspects of the practicums and things like that. As we condense the course down to remote, I think 2 days is a fairly accurate assessment of how long it takes for most of the courses. The CQL is actually slightly less than a 1-day course, I believe.
Then I have, are there any metrics available to show the return on investment to an employer that is not ready to be an AV 9000 company yet?
So there may be, Irene,
that's a hard, that not really. The reason for that is that unfortunately companies do not want to share that internal information with us.
Yeah, so we've got some compelling data, but I can't say because it does depend on the amount of application, the type of work, and the amount of work that you're doing to show the return. But there are some compelling conversation points that are within the CQL that will point to it. This was kind of like back when everybody was all about the carbon credits for video conferencing, if you remember that. Everybody wanted to say, well, how many plane trips and how many carbon credits will this save me? That's kind of a more mystical than methodical number to come to. But the simple answer to it is, if you know exactly how to do it, if you follow the exact instructions and you assure that it was executed and completed in the exact way you expected, it's absolutely irrefutably, inarguably a fact that you have saved time in doing so. Again, we're not asking you to do a bunch of extra things. What we're asking you to do within a quality management system is to make sure you do the things that you have to do. And a great example I use in this instance when people say, well, I can't do all that measurement time, we're in the field. I say, I walk people kind of through a process. Well, I don't have time to do measurements on the SPL. Well, if you take an amplifier out of the box to install it, where's the attenuator set? I've never seen one that's set at the perfect level for my room, but generally they're set at full attenuation or zero sound. So you're going to have to crank that knob up, whether it's on the front of the bank. Now, if you're cranking that knob up with one hand, isn't it just as easy to have that SPL meter kind of out there in the field where you can see it, and crank it up till you hit the number that everybody promised we would hit and calculate it, as opposed to just turn it up to, yeah, that sounds loud enough to me behind the rack. I don't see any extra time or effort really there. I see a lot of guesswork taken out and not having to go back 2 or 4 or 10 times to crank it up or crank it down more. Anybody else?
Tom K says, set it at LAR. Looks about right.
That is, I will give you a humor credit for that.
And then there's the question of, so talking like an auditor having a checklist, would there be something of a checklist that would be provided to the technicians to follow?
So yeah, so that's the everybody knows what the test is portion of it. The way we apply it is give the checklist right to the technicians and the project managers and the engineers, because they're really the ones that need to follow it. So in a really an optimal organization, the engineer is going to follow the checklist as they put the design together, because it's like, oh wow, I forgot to make sure that I had a fan in the rack because the BTU load wasn't calculated. So they're going to do it at the point of impact. And then the independent auditor, if you decide to go that route, is going to go back and check it and see that it's done. So sometimes the fact of the matter is companies don't or won't or can't afford to have an independent auditor that's all they do is audit. So in that case, we self-audit or we co-audit with peer reviews. And it's absolutely in the spirit. A matter of fact, it's in the intent of AV 9000 to have the person doing the do follow the checklists, and then having the person following up behind them and checking use the same list. It's not cheating, it's singing from the same sheet. Great question, though. Anyone else?
Hi, Bill. Tom Zimmerman.
Z-Man.
So, now that I no longer work for you and I'm working for an end user, is there any sort of certification for companies that are doing a lot of audiovisual, but, are the end user to get a certification of some sort?
So we do see a lot. Thanks for that question. Tom and I worked together on that for many years, and so he softballs these questions to me. There is, and we see two things happening, Tom. One thing we see a lot is the CQT for the end users on site. So that way they can go in and they can post audit or they can pre-audit. We see some that'll get the CQD so that they can check the consultant or the integrator design work. But really that certified quality maintenance technician, that new one is kind of the best fit there, because it doesn't require them to be CTSD, CTSI experienced. If they know enough to follow a basic sensory checklist, do I hear distortion? Can I see the screen with the lights on? Those more kind of boiled down levels of interpretive testing rather than metric testing is the one we see most for the end users. But we see an awful lot of end users with CQTs on staff, and that makes those trunk slammer companies really nervous. But for AV 9000 companies, it makes us really happy, because we know we're not going to have to argue with them about it doesn't sound green enough to me, because they understand the terminology and the technology that we're going after. So any of the certifications help end users just as well as it does the integrator.
So that would be me then.
I'd say you can need all three.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. Got a few minutes left. Anybody else?
Someone here is asking, is there a way to get the checklist to see if my company wants to pursue certification? Checklists are only available to those companies that are members. There is free information that can be downloaded, can be requested on the website, and it gives you an idea of what AQAV is, but it is not the complete checklist.
Yeah, and I'll take that opportunity to riff a little bit on how the checklist came to be. This started 8-9 years ago now, with a consortium of people from all over the industry, and I was lucky enough to be involved in the early days, and I've stayed on because it's so fun. But there's nothing more intriguing than to be in a call. Well, every single person on the call is smarter than you, and that was a gift that I got by joining that committee. All of these industry icons with so much experience and having made so many mistakes, which is really our best education, bringing those concerns and tragedies to the same table. That's what created this checklist. This checklist is comprised of hundreds of years, if not up to 1,000 now, of errors and misinterpretations and successes, quantified, clearly, concisely stated, with a method for measurement wherever possible. So it is a massive amount of brain effort that is continually renewed every year with fresh perspective. Some of the folks on the call here I know have sat on committees with, and they're crazy sharp. They're from all different aspects and walks of experience. And so that comprises the checklist. If you complete the checklist successfully, I have yet to find anything that failed in the system that wasn't a post-commissioning failure, meaning it happened later in time, or it wasn't something that wasn't completely concisely and clarified in the functional scope as an expectation at some point that's just a bluebird that flies in. This will find and eliminate defects. Got time maybe for one more. No more? Well, I will say, I'll ask myself and Irene, did we have fun doing this? I know I did. I get excited talking about AV. My wife says that's sad. I just think it's cool. This is something that we're all very passionate about at AQAV, and you can be passionate about it with us. Contact Irene, reach out to me. We'll make you a part of a volunteer committee and get you involved in growing and learning and helping the mind share that is this volunteer effort. It's always good to know you did the right things at work. And that's the only reason I get a full 6.5 hours of sleep at night. I can check the checklist, I can measure the measurements, and I can come home and be done for the day, whether that's the design or in the field. And that in and of itself will promote employee engagement, owner content, end user delight. And those are the things that AV9000 helped you to achieve with your individual efforts and your organizational and end user efforts. Thank you so much for spending an hour listening to us share all of this stuff. The education and the questions don't stop here. Feel free to reach out and we'll be around. Take care, everybody, and be safe.